the Kell of Kells, a fabled title regarded as the highest honor bestowed upon any of the Elixni, or the Fallen as we know them. But it is a prophesized term hidden behind translations and interpretations of history keepers and overeager captains. According to Varix, the terminology in use today is a falsehood. It is reserved for a lost house or a specific Elixni yet to be seen. But one ambitious Fallen seeks to keep the title, to his grave if necessary, Skolas, the Rabid. Prior to the Battle of Twilight Gap, the wolves were led by another, a Viriax, and Skolas at the time was an obedient pup, yet to be fueled by rage and vengeance. But at the Battle of Ceres, which would be the ultimate salvation for the city, the course of fate for Skolas and all those tied to him would change. This is his story. Perspective is often confused for sympathy in our time. Many would link the two, especially when discussing individuals that tempt the flames of passionate discourse. This report may seem apologetic to the cause of the Fallen and its people, but make no mistake. We were gifted with a vast intelligence, not so we could draw dividing lines, but so we could make them transparent. The hope and raw idealism that we could see ourselves basking in the light of the traveler together, varying species of sentience. The darkness has robbed us of this hope, or as some would describe, naivety. And now we see battle with enemies that contain the same aptitude for empathy. Skolas was brutal, efficient, and calculating during the Reef Wars. He was a bane to the Awoken, so devastating that imprisonment was seen as a gift. Ultimately, the progress and battles of the Reef Wars are collected in a series of Awoken military briefs termed the Maraid. Skolas and those that would follow him occupy a large portion of these documents, so information about his path to re-imprisonment is abundant. After the death of Viriax at Ceres, due to the Queen's harbingers, the House of Wolves was divided into various factions, and these factions all contained a would-be Kell. There was Irix, the Wolf Baroness, Periax, the Howling, and Skolas, the Rabid. Conflicting reports also state that Velenix, the Ravenous, was another claimant to the Wolf Kellship. The Reef Wars was more than a series of battles between two separate ideologies. It was the Awoken against various Kells, all of which believed they had the right to rule. The Queen, too, can be considered a Kell, another wolf claimant. In essence, the Reef Wars were battles for the soul of the wolves, the new direction the house would take for the future. At the time, many Fallen saw themselves at odds with the tactics of Skolas, siding with Periax and finding themselves occupied heavily with infighting. However, the amount of claimants would not remain high, as Periax was goaded into a clever ploy established by Skolas, ultimately leading to his elimination. With the use of his vassals, Skolas would expertly play a rival Kell claimant and an Awoken paladin, seen as fleet admirals, against one another at the Battle of Iris. Drevis, the Wolf Baroness, led the massacre of the Amethyst, allowing Paladin Zir to chase her to Iris, while fellow vassal Greyor would attack Periax, leading him as well to Iris. There, Greyor and Drevis would retreat from battle using Iris as a screen. Paladin Zir, too caught up with the fluctuating climate of battle, would find Periax's catch in a position of disadvantage. Ultimately, a master stroke by Skolas and his vassals, eliminating one of his potential rivals while weakening the defensive positions of the Awoken within the Reef. Drevis would later be captured by Imogen Rife at Bamberga. Rife was an aspiring paladin of the Queen, but Drevis's capture was largely due to Prince Uldren's crows and their decryption efforts. This was seen as arguably the first victory for the Awoken since Ceres. During this time period, the strongest of the wolf claimants, Irix, would gather the Calyx servitors and high servitors in a strategy to control the ether supply of the house. She would also secure the command of the Orbix servitors, which are believed to be separated from the House of Wolves, as they held permissions over the wolf servitors. This tactic allowed Eryx to establish an early dominance during the Reef Wars against the other Kel claimants, but ultimately, she would fall prey to the desperate plans utilized by her more aggressive rival, Skolas. She fell during the Battle of Eos to one of Skolas' vassals, Picus. However, it was a Pyrrhic victory for Skolas, as Picus had decimated his own fleet in order to eliminate Eryx, leading to a weaker overall position for Skolas. After the victory at Eos, Skolas would punish Picus by docking his arms and cutting a portion of his ether rations, along with a demotion to Dreg. Skolas knew that the Reef Wars had gone on too long. The siege of the city and the Battle of the Gap would not wait for him, and any losses accumulated to his forces this late in the campaign would effectively eliminate their efficiency to reinforce the other fallen houses on Earth. The Reef Wars were coming to a close. Skolas was now the sole Kel claimant, and mobilized his remaining forces in a rescue effort for Drevis, one of his vassals, captured earlier by Paladin Rife. Persis, the Bane of Pallas, would lead a strike team to recapture Drevis and cause instability inside the defensive line, transporting both Drevis and a wolf-high servitor known as Calyx IV. The siege of Pallas had lasted for a large portion of the Reef Wars and was reaching its frantic climax. Persis would use the hull breach originally weakened by Wexus on Paladin Rife's command vessel, Athens Hull. There, Persis would move to free both the High Servitor and the Wolf Baroness, but Rife attempted to dissuade the Wolf strike team, rather than allowing some over-eager vassal a moment of glory. Rife would scrap the High Servitor Calyx IV, but before Rife could execute Drevis, Persis would find Rife in solo combat. Unfortunately, the Maraid does not expand upon this moment. The Wolves would be forced back, but only after Rife fell victim to Persis. A blade point striking deep into the Awoken leadership, one of their heroes, a fabled paladin, had fallen in the defense of a city they had never seen for a people they did not yet know. When Persis attempted to recapture the momentum after Rife's demise, a commander, Hallam Fen, the protege of Rife, would eliminate all sense of hope for the fallen strike team. Fen re-established contact with Reef forces throughout the belt and devised a clever strategy to trick the fallen into a complete rout. Through the use of a visual illusion, Fen would make it seem as if the Harbingers were going to be used on the asteroid Pallas. The Harbingers were a darkness-infused weapon of immense power, originally used on Ceres during the first battle of the Reef Wars to destroy the asteroid. This initial strategy effectively annihilated half of the fallen house, the first Wolfkel Viriax, and caused what the fallen wolves described as the Scatter. Persis, unwilling to lose any more of Skolas' fleet and soldiers, organized a retreat, failing to recapture Drevis, and set the stage for the fall of Beltrek the Veiled. Fortuna, aptly named as the Roman goddess of luck, perhaps coincidence, but this battle would change the course of the war in favor of the Awoken and push the fallen further to more desperate measures. Beltrek was pressured into establishing a secure supply zone, and Fortuna had the organic compounds necessary for the fallen to construct ether. However, Paladin Abrazir would not allow such desecration to occur inside the reef and would move to silence the perversions of the fallen. Zir split her forces in two. One force would be used as a diversionary tactic, assaulting Beltrek's fleet, attempting to resupply. This was to screen the second fleet with another awoken weapon of unspeakable power. This weapon, codenamed Charybdis, had an unfathomable ability to pull asteroids out of their trajectory to be used as collision-based projectiles. Charybdis would pull the asteroid Tenet into a collision course with Fortuna, causing untold chaos amongst the ranks of the fallen. This chaos was immediately taken advantage of, and the fallen defensive lines crumbled with relative ease, allowing Zir to capture Beltrek and force Skolas into one final desperate maneuver. After the Fortuna plummet, a coded fallen communique would reach the hands of Prince Uldren's crows. It was from a Verix of House Judgment, asking to secure settlement with Reef Military Command. The Queen used this information from Verix to end the Reef Wars at Sibyl. Skolas and the remaining wolves still able to fight would amass at Sibyl, attempting to assail the Reef military fortress and cripple the power base of the Queen's paladins inside the belt. Unfortunately, Skolas was betrayed by Varix of House Judgment, and in one quick pincer maneuver, Skolas, Calyx 12, and the remaining Wolf leadership were incapacitated. The Sabille Uprising was an end to the Reef Wars, and the beginning of a new era for the fallen House of Wolves. This era was a subservient one for the Fallen as they began to serve for the first time a non-Elixni Kel, Amarazav, the Queen in the Reef. Some would argue that while Varix was instrumental in an expedited end to the Reef Wars, after Fortuna, the Awoken not only had the technological edge, but the military momentum to end the war on their terms. Sabille was an end to the Reef Wars that allowed less bloodshed and more time for the Queen to establish her newly conquered realm. But the story of Skolas does not end there. He was betrayed, he was foolish, and he was prideful. He believed to his core that the namesake Kel meant all would follow and none would betray. He fought his own people for the control of one house, so that they may meet their brothers on Earth to fight an army of the so-called dead and damned. He believed that his power and strategies were absolute, that none would oppose him after the falls of Urxis and Periax. But he did not calculate the Dreg's strength, the idealism of survival over a return to glory. But the fate of Skolas is more than just brutality and political maneuvering. It is the story of a people that believe we are the enemy, that we hoard a great machine, that we prolong the whirlwind and force them to scraps like rabid dogs. If only they knew that there are greater things than golden ages and immortality, that the darkness is an enemy to all life, human, awoken, exo, and Elixni. The darkness does not care what you call your species. It is apathy in the basest form, and in the end, Skolas would see a piece of absolute darkness, a light snuffed out by blind rage. More on Skolas in my next report.